Hello, everybody. I am back. Okay, right. So it won't let me do my screen sharing through Facebook, so you just have my face for this one, I'm afraid. So you don't get to see my beautiful slides, but I will post them in the group afterwards. They're really not that exciting. They're just kind of prompts for me on the main questions. That I get asked, with a couple of little notes underneath them. So yeah, it looks like it's just going to be me talking. So yeah, sorry about that. But I'm going to get Zoom set up for the future ones, just so that it's easier to do the sharing into the group, because it's just a bit more streamlined. Because Facebook gives you all these features and then takes them away, so it's really annoying. Anywho's, right, so anyways, yeah, so I thought, with a lot of us being back in lockdown again, and kind of, I noticed with a lot of people, kind of morale is not quite so high. So I thought I would just do a series of different kind of trainings, different themed things. Here in the group, I'm going to try and put some more blog posts out there on the blog. I thought I'd even challenge myself, and I'm going to try doing Instagram Live as well, because I've never done Instagram Live before, so might try that one next week. Just try and do some trainings for you all on different topics. And so please post questions in the groups of things that you want to learn about. Yeah, because or not everyone, but a lot of us are in lockdown again. So just things that you want help on, that hopefully I can help you with. And so for the first one that I'm doing, I wasn't sure what to do today's one on, and then I got quite a few messages last week. And actually, since we just had the retreat 2 weeks ago, and then a few other people messaged me, and these are quite common questions that get asked all the time. How do I get started on elopements, or how do I book more elopements? I thought that was a pretty good place to start. Lucy, your comments went in the wrong place, so now you look insane. Well, I can't, because I'm in here, I can't see any other comments, so I have no idea. But Lucy, yeah, I'm not going to say anything. Yeah, so that is the theme of today's kind of, I mean, it's sort of a Q&A, in that obviously it's just me. It sounds very self-indulgent. I'm asking the questions and then answering them, but these are all questions that I get asked a lot, either in the group or in my DMs, or when I'm meeting people in person, is how can I get into elopements? How can I book more elopements? Or things along those lines of, I only get inquiries for really low value elopements. How can I book higher value ones? So those are some things that I wanted to cover in today's Facebook Live. So just a little background for those of you who don't know me. I think for some of you who are on the call, obviously there's some people here who do know me quite well, but for some of you who don't know me, my accent probably gives me away that I am originally from the UK. I'm British originally. I've been living in Austria for almost 10 years now. I was formerly a ski and snowboard instructor, which is how I met my husband. I got into photography after I got married, started my business in 2015. And in 2016 was when I shot my first elopement, and it was just the best thing ever. Loved it. And it was at the end of 2017 that I went into doing photography full time. And at the end of 2017, I also kind of decided to go full on into my niche of the adventurous weddings and elopements. So it wasn't specifically only elopements for me, it was also sometimes slightly larger weddings. So the ski weddings are a big thing for me. But for me, from 2018, I was only accepting bookings that had kind of an adventurous element, so only things that really fitted with my brand and my values. So yeah, that's me, that's who I am. So since I can't do my screen share, I have to now look at my notes that are written next to me, so sorry about that, guys. So yeah, let's start with kind of, and yeah, sorry for those of you who were at my workshop, you may hear a few things kind of repeated a little bit that we talked about at the workshop. But for those of you who haven't been to one of my workshops, one of the things that I really want to start with for anyone who is interested in booking elopements, who hasn't done any before or who hasn't done many before, one of the really important things to start with is to really look at getting a clear understanding of what an elopement is. Because I think this is where a lot of people actually go wrong right from the start, is that they actually have a little bit of a kind of a misguided idea of what an elopement is. So I want to go just through a couple of quick misconceptions about what an elopement is, and how this can actually maybe be affecting how you're booking and the types of clients that you're booking. So one of the first ones, an easy one, is that elopements are quite last minute, spontaneous, and very unplanned. And so while yes, they can be very last minute. The shortest one for me was 3 weeks between booking and shooting it. They can also be 2 years for me is the longest in advance that I've got elopements booked. So I've got stuff booked into 2022, especially with COVID as well. People are planning these things way in advance, but even before COVID, I've had stuff booked nearly 2 years in advance, and those were elopements. So thinking that they only happen really short and last minute is something that isn't necessarily true. So when you're thinking about how you market it and things, having no strategy, thinking that people don't book these things in advance, yeah, it's not necessarily all couples. So the next big one is that all elopements are low budget, that couples just don't have a budget if they're going to elope, that they don't want to spend money on anything. Again, not true. And yeah, there's some people here who have shot elopements where couples have had no budget. But I'm sure there's also people here in this group who can testify that there are also eloping couples out there who have the money and are willing to spend it. They just don't want to spend it on a big wedding. They're more than happy to spend it on things for their elopement that they care about. Their priorities are just different. So don't assume that just because a couple is eloping that they have no budget to spend. Yeah, so that's just a big one. Don't assume elopements equals no budget or low budget. Okay, another one, and this is really a big one. Mainly photographers, videographers are really guilty of this one. And that's just going, oh, an elopement's just like an extended couple shoot or like an extended engagement shoot. If you've done more than 1 or 2 actual real elopements, and I'm not talking an elopement where it was just a couple of hours, like proper full day elopements, then you know that it's not just a couple shoot. Also for the couple, yes, you might be with them all day and you are there, especially if you are a photographer or a videographer, you are there documenting the whole day, but it's not just posing for photos the whole time. It's still a wedding day. The day has so much more meaning than if it's just a photo shoot. So you can't compare it to, I think a lot of the times the one that I see them compared to quite a lot with the elopements is like the Asian pre-weddings, which are often, they're compared to the Asian pre-weddings because it's the idea of, the couple on a mountain or the couple in this epic location. But the Asian pre-weddings, it's very much, we're going to have, the most epic location and the most epic photos, but there isn't that emotional side to it, which there is with an elopement. There's so much more to an elopement. Um, so don't think that it is just about the photo shoot. There's a whole lot more to it, and there's a whole lot more that goes into the planning of it as well. Another big one is the assumption that elopements are just the couple. And maybe traditionally they were just the couple, maybe depending on where it was happening, maybe witnesses. But these days, the definition of what an elopement is has kind of changed. It used to be the old definition of eloping was a couple running off in secret to get married, usually because people didn't really agree with them getting married. Whereas now, an elopement really, that we still call it an elopement, but really what we're talking about is an intimate, intentional celebration of a couple's relationship, and creating a day that focuses on the experience of that couple, as opposed to a more traditional wedding, which is built around traditions, built around the experience of the whole kind of everyone that attends the wedding. And so with an elopement, whilst a lot of them, it can be just the couple, you also find that some elopements, they do bring a small number of family with them. Occasionally it could be a couple of best friends. Sometimes, depending on the ages of the couples, it could be their children with them. It really, really varies. So don't just assume an elopement is only two people, because it can also be a small group of people supporting the couple that is getting married. The reason that a lot of people within the kind of elopement world would still class it as an elopement is the day is still very much focused on the couple, the couple's needs and wants, and that everyone else kind of just goes along with the couple. Just going to flick back to my other screen a second. Another one, so this is where I think a lot of people also struggle when they want to kind of break into the elopement market and book more elopements, is they assume that all elopements are adventurous and that all elopements have to be somewhere remote or on the top of a mountain. And yeah, okay, for me, that kind of is the case because I live in the middle of the Alps. And so my business is built on come and elope in the Alps and say your vows on the top of a mountain. Because it wouldn't make sense for me to build a business on any other kind of elopement. But that isn't the only kind of an elopement out there. An elopement can be anything really that the couple wants it to be. So an elopement can take place anywhere. It can be anything. An elopement is focused on the intimate experience of the couple. And so an elopement can also take place in a city. So I remember we had some discussions at the workshop, and one of the people who was there had actually done a city elopement in Rome. I know people who've done city elopements in London, in the UK. So they can be anywhere and everywhere. So don't just think that, oh, if I want to shoot elopements, I have to move to Iceland or I have to move to the Alps. Like you can build elopements into your business no matter where you live. You just have to think about what opportunities you can use to create for couples this experience of eloping in the areas that you have right where you are, which I'll talk a little bit more later actually when it comes to how you can then start to add elopements to your existing business. But just the idea of if you want to create an elopement package or add elopements to your business, that you have to somehow be adventurous. It it doesn't have to be just couples in remote locations. It can be anywhere. And a couple of final ones. Another thing with elopements, and I think a lot of people assume, and this is not always then photographers, but more other vendors within the wedding industry, the assumption that with an elopement that there are no other vendors involved, that it's just the photographer. And you kind of see different sides to this. So you'll see often styled elopement shoots in wedding blogs and magazines, which they're styled shoots because they don't look like a lot of elopements. But there are some couples who do want these kinds of elopements, so the ones where it's not always just the couple, but a small group of people. So, what a lot of us are now referring to as a micro wedding. So again, don't always get hung up on the actual terms of an elopement, a micro wedding, an intimate wedding. Sometimes there are other vendors involved who create all these beautiful details. I work, I think people might be quite surprised, quite a lot with wedding planners for a lot of my elopements. Simply because a lot of my couples, even though they're super excited to elope, they're really independent. A lot of them are quite busy in their professional lives, and they actually really kind of like, even though they completely, trust me to help them, they also like having a wedding planner who also helps coordinate all of their accommodation, who helps kind of with their travel arrangements and things, just so that they're not organizing a whole load of other things. If they're doing the legal paperwork, just having someone else take care of it. So actually quite a lot of people who I work with for elopements, they do have a wedding planner. So don't assume just because it's an elopement that there are no other vendors involved, or that they don't want details. So yeah, it can be that you have elopements where you do actually work with a team of other vendors. And just the final one is that don't assume that because it's an elopement, it's going to be less work. And I'll talk a bit about this when we come to pricing, because one of the big questions is how to price for an elopement. But the biggest thing, I think a lot of people are drawn to an elopement because they think it's going to be less work than a big wedding. And I'm really sorry if I'm going to burst your bubble, but in my experience, it's not. It's really not less work. It's just different work. I really like it. I love elopements. I love the different kind of work that they are, the different challenges. But I'm in no denial that it is, I think, more work than traditional weddings. I mean, actually, occasionally when I have bigger weddings, it's quite nice that I actually have a bit less work to do with those clients. Yes, so those are a few kind of common kind of misconceptions with elopements, that if you are trying to kind of book more elopements, depending on where you are, what stage you are at, and you're kind of not quite hitting the mark with your marketing and your messaging, just have a look at some of the things, have a look at some of the ways that you're talking about elopements, and maybe just see if some of your views are maybe kind of a little bit mixed up, and that maybe that's why. If some of your views are a little bit kind of outdated, that your kind of ideas of what an elopement isn't quite aligning with maybe what some of the couples are looking for. Okay, so let's move on to, the next question, which often gets asked by people to me when it's like, a lot of these are kind of all linked together. So it's, how long is an elopement? These kind of all link together with, when it comes to deciding your pricing, your packages. But I thought I'd start with this one before I go into pricing. So how long generally is an elopement? Because you can't really know what packages to make for elopements if you don't know how long they are. And certainly coming from the UK, I know a lot of people from the UK kind of wedding scene uh, are used to getting requests for, oh, we're eloping, so it's just we're going to the registry office and then we want some pictures, so it's just a couple of hours. Um, and so those are the ones as well where it's like, well, we don't have a big budget, we don't really need much, so it's just a couple of hours. Um, I will say for me, from my opinion, I don't class that as an elopement. I class that as a registry office ceremony and some portraits. To me, that's still not an elopement because that's just a ceremony and some portraits. That's not about somebody actually valuing, documenting their whole day. They don't want this experience. Certainly for me and what my brand is about, that's kind of not kind of how I define an elopement. But again, this is why we're here. This is why we're talking about it. This is for you to decide as well, ultimately. So, how long is an elopement? Well, yeah, I mean it varies. I can't really use 2020 as any examples because I've only shot one wedding. Unfortunately. But if I go by last year, by 2019, it very much varies. So my shortest package, which I think I shot one of my shortest packages in 2019, which was 4 hours, and the longest that I shot in 2019, which I had two bookings for this, was 3 days. So I shot twice. I shot 3 day elopements. But the average tends to be around 8 to 9 hours, which is, yeah, kind of is pretty much for me a full day elopement. And again, if anyone has any questions while I'm kind of talking through stuff, please drop them in the comments, and I will try to come back to them, either answer them as I'm going through if it's about what I'm talking about, or if it's about something else, come back to them at the end as well. But yeah, so in terms of length, from my experience, anything from 4 hours to 3 days. And often, I think I probably link to this as well when we go to pricing, but often when clients book, when they're planning an elopement, not all couples really know when they're starting the whole process how long their day is going to be. And usually that's because they don't know anyone else who's eloped, and they've obviously not done it before themselves either. So they're kind of coming to you as the expert for the guidance. And I do find in my experience, a lot of the people who come to me do come and just say, that we only need kind of the 4 hours. Sometimes they only come to me and just say a couple of hours. And I explain to them through the booking process that my shortest package is 4 hours, and that's the minimum that I do, because I feel like, it does their day a disservice to have any less. And I explain, what I capture within that 4 hours. And I don't think out of the people, because of the kind of the screening that I do through the booking process, the messaging on my website, anyone who really doesn't want anything less, hang on, anyone who wants anything less than 4 hours probably doesn't get to the point of filling in the booking form anyway. But usually, yeah, if they're happy with 4 hours, they will contact me, and on the call we'll talk about it. If on the call they still aren't quite sure about the idea of having a longer amount of coverage, or they just can't see how it would work, because again, they are still thinking as well in their own minds of, isn't that just like a photo shoot for a long time? Then I will explain to them, no, it's you're just doing fun stuff and I'm just capturing it. But throughout then the whole planning process, I'm kind of working with them to plan a schedule for the day, and then they can very much see, okay, well, we're doing this, then we're going here, then we'll have some lunch, and then we're going to go to this spot. That then they can already see, based on the things that they're doing on that day, if I go, okay, well, if I arrive at this time, if you've got with the 4 hours, that means I have to leave here. They can already see, from quite early on, oh, the 4 hours isn't going to cover it. No, we definitely need you longer. And it's a really fluid process. So um, it's quite easy as well for them and I do help them plan the day. I help them find the locations if they don't know where they want to have the pictures, where they want to do the ceremony. Um, it's very easy to kind of help them see that they can make this into a full day. Um, so I will lead that on actually into the next thing, which is how should you price? What happens during a 3-day elopement? 3-day elopements, it is basically they're just doing fun things for 3 days. So 3-day elopements, those ones are both of those were multi-day hikes. So we were hiking hut to hut through different sections in the Dolomites. So one of those we were doing a via ferrata on one day, then hiking over a summit the second day, and back down to the valley the third day, and another one was over a couple of mountain passes. So they were quite long, quite challenging hikes where we were staying in mountain huts, and different, depending on different ones, they were doing like their ceremony at a certain points. So it's basically say them having a full it's them having it's like their wedding and almost their honeymoon kind of trip as well, and you're there capturing it. Right, Marco, work. Sorry, I'm just going to read Marco's comment, see if there's what? I'll come back to that a little bit later, Marco, to do with working with or without a planner. To do with how I work with and without a planner, because it is a good question, because actually I work quite a lot with planners and without planners, and although I assist with planning, I don't do any wedding planning, so I will explain the difference as well, because a lot of it is also quite important legally, especially here in Europe, or certainly here in Austria, the difference of what I do with the couples. So yes, let's go back to the next thing which I was about to go to, which was after looking at how long an elopement is, was how you should price for them, because that is kind of the next thing from, or how long is an elopement, because if you don't know how long it's going to be, you don't know how to kind of adjust your prices for them. So in terms of pricing for elopements, I actually don't have different prices for elopements versus weddings. I price everything exactly the same. And I have two main reasons for that. The first one is that it is, for me, I don't really see any difference in the work. With elopements, I find that I spend a lot more time corresponding with the couples. I spent hours, literally sometimes hours, emailing with elopement couples, whereas a lot of my wedding couples, they generally, because they've got so much more coordinating to do, because they're planning an entire wedding, usually coordinating all sorts of stuff with guests, they don't need me personally so much, because I'm not, they don't rely on me so much. I'm really just there as the photographer. I am, sometimes giving them some tips on, so when it's a wedding, it's usually a ski wedding, because those are generally the only ones I do where they have more guests. So I may be giving them some tips on skiing in their wedding clothes, helping them decide which routes we're going to take, which lifts and things, so that we can make sure that we don't miss the last lift, that we can get back to the venue. But I'm a lot less hands-on with the planning. So elopements actually end up being quite a lot more work. yes, at the wedding there's a lot more guests to photograph, but if I'm at a wedding for 8 hours, or I'm at an elopement for 8 hours, I'm still there for 8 hours. It's still an 8 hour booking. And I got also really tired of having those conversations with couples where they would try and justify the difference of, oh, but we have up to 10 guests, but we've only got 15, but 2 of them are only kids. So can we have the pricing for the smaller wedding, not the bigger wedding? I didn't like having those conversations of justifying why one was a different price to the other. So at the end, I was just like, you know what? It's all work for me. I was like, no, it's all the same price. And the other reason was actually the perception of value as well. Of, I believe my work is equally as important and equally valuable, and I believe the couple's wedding is equally important and equally valuable, whether it is an elopement or a wedding. I'm not going to work harder or less hard depending on if it's a wedding or an elopement, and the couple shouldn't be expecting to pay less, in my opinion, if it's a wedding or if it's an elopement. Yeah, so I was just like, no, I don't distinguish. I don't discriminate on whether it's a wedding or an elopement. So that's the reason why I charge the same. However, I believe that when you're setting your own prices, it's honestly up to you. I can't tell you how to set your prices. Everyone has their own justifications for how they set their prices. So it's up to you, but definitely when you are thinking about pricing for elopements versus weddings, don't automatically assume it's an elopement, so it's less work. So I will just price it less. If it's lower hours, okay, then you can reduce the thing, but don't just automatically assume it will be less work, because it may not always be the case. Okay, I'm gonna go on to another one that actually slightly different theme, but one that also I see, I haven't been asked, I don't think in this group, but I see it coming up in quite a lot of other groups, and that is people, when they want to start shooting more elopements, asking if they should rebrand. And so that is a big one that I see in so many photography groups. So do I need to rebrand if I want to shoot more elopements? And in my honest opinion, the answer is probably no. Which is actually something that a lot of people may disagree with. But I'll tell you my reason behind this. So and this is where I'm annoyed that I can't show you my slide, because so my belief on this is that I see a lot of people who will spend thousands of dollars, euros, pounds, whatever your currency is, on a beautiful new website and a logo with mountains on it, and you know, a lovely new theme that says you're an elopement photographer, but they don't get the bookings because they don't realize that just creating a logo with mountains and calling yourself an elopement photographer it's not enough. If you want to shoot elopements, if you've already got an existing brand, you can already start shooting elopements or with what you've already got. And what I mean is, if you've already built a brand and your brand is based on your core values, so your values are, you know, it's based on what you believe, and you're already attracting your ideal clients, then it's quite easy to start adding elopements to what you already do, and it will still make sense to who your ideal clients are, because essentially your ideal clients aren't going to change too much if your brand is based around your values, because your ideal clients, whether it's for a kind of a bigger elopement or a smaller intimate micro wedding, they're still going to hold a lot of the same core values to you. So it's absolutely possible to start marketing to elopements and to start booking elopements with the brand that you already have, if you're clear on who your ideal client is and your brand is based on your values, and your messaging is clear. So don't just go out, if you want to start shooting more elopements, don't just go out and switch to a logo with, I don't know, mountains on, or so I always use mountains because I just see a lot of people changing and saying they want to shoot elopements and switching to a mountain logo. I mean, I have a mountain logo, but that's because it's based on the mountain that I can see from my window. But I say it jokingly, but I honestly believe that when your brand is built around you and your core values, you can pivot your brand and change slightly, you know, who you target, or not who you target, but the services you offer, and it will still make sense because it's based on personality traits, on core values, rather than just the service that you offer, which actually is something that I talk about in so much more depth in my workshop, and maybe that will be something that I do a mini training on in not quite as much detail in the coming weeks, but something maybe that we can do a mini training on if people are interested. How the majority of my clients find you. I will possibly cover that in the next thing a little bit, but I will come back to that properly again at the end. So the final slide that I had prepared that I will just talk you through, which was how can you book more elopements. So everybody here will have a slightly different brand, because depending on obviously where you are in your business, you may already have an existing brand, or you may be building one up from kind of scratch if you are completely new to the game. I'm just going to take a quick sip of water because my throat is getting really dry, starting to get very scratchy. So how can you start to, with what you've got already, how can you start to attract more elopements and more of these intimate weddings? So some of the things that I think are really important to do for attracting these kinds of weddings. The first one is to start adapting your messaging. So if you have until now only been shooting a lot more larger, more traditional weddings, then you've probably been talking in most of your messaging, and by in your messaging I mean in the text on your website, in your blog posts, in your social media captions. You've probably been talking mostly around the topics of bigger traditional weddings and themes around that. So if you want to start engaging with couples who are considering these smaller, more intimate types of celebrations, and let's be honest, with COVID, a lot more couples are considering it simply because in a lot of places, big weddings just can't happen right now. So start talking about elopements, start talking about intimate weddings, and start talking about them in a positive and empowering way. So start showing in the way that you talk about them that you value these types of weddings as much as you value big celebrations. You don't have to change your whole website. You don't have to suddenly start saying big weddings are evil, big weddings are boring. If your type of client and your audience, if you actually love those types of weddings too. So this is, again, it comes back to knowing what your brand is, and knowing who your ideal client is. Maybe your ideal client is someone who actually really does love to party with their friends, but they can't do that, but they still really want to get married right now. That you can find a way to adapt your messaging to say, look, I know it sucks that you can't have the big party that you want, but here's some amazing ideas of ways that you can have this beautiful celebration that's all about you and your love, and still embody that party spirit that's a party just for two, and have the big party later. Knowing your client means you can find ways to talk about other ways to get married that would still appeal to them, but how they can do it on this smaller, more intimate scale. You could create a page on your website that is all about eloping and intimate weddings. If you are starting to create some posts on social media, lead with empathy and with people, especially if they are, if you know that you've got couples who have already had to cancel a wedding. Lead with empathy and say, look, I know it sucks right now, but actually it's not the end of the world. There's some really amazing things that you could do, instead of going, oh, weddings are cancelled, it sucks. Show them how much knowledge you have and all these other ideas that are out there for them. Be the one that's actually there going, look, you can do all these amazing things. I know it's been used over and over again, but love isn't cancelled. Like, everyone keeps saying it, but just showing them what choices they have, and almost challenging them into a different way of thinking, and getting them to reimagine how their wedding day could be. And you can use your images to reinforce this. And I mean, we've all got banks of images, whether you're a photographer, whether you're a planner. Detail images maybe aren't suitable, but we've all got couple shots that can be used. Couple shots are, they don't contextualize where a location was, so it completely can work to be any kind of location. So adapting your messaging. Very similar, leading on from that, is creating content on your website and on your blog, for eloping couples. So when we were looking at a lot of myths around eloping, and that elopements have to be for adventurous couples, and they have to be out in nature, and they can only be in remote places and standing on a mountain. They don't. So use your zone of genius, use your skills, use your knowledge of the areas that you know so much about to think, what resources could you create for couples in your area, or areas that you know a lot about, for elopements and small weddings? Could you create a guide for your county, for your state, on how to elope there? These are really great ways to start to give people ideas and inspiration on, how to start planning a different kind of wedding day. Especially if your blog until now has all been about, questions on what to ask your wedding venue. Big traditional style blog posts. Start creating blog post content that is more relevant to a couple that is eloping and the questions that they might be asking, or a couple that's planning a more intimate wedding, and things that they can do to make their smaller wedding still memorable and special. and so yeah, like I said, start local, start with what you know, um, and then after that, you know, if you have experience in destination weddings and you have a destination portfolio already, if you already know certain areas that you think would be amazing for elopements, then also you can create resources for eloping in those areas as well. Um, then we already mentioned pricing. So, you know, if you've already got a pricing system set up for traditional weddings, have a look and see, you know, does that work with elopements? Do you need to create a separate pricing guide for elopements, or do you need to adapt it slightly so that if you get couples who inquire about elopements, is it easy for them to book you? Because I think sometimes that can also be a bit of an off-putting or a bit of a barrier for couples. If you've got all this information on your website, you start doing all this work to attract eloping couples, but then you send them a pricing guide that's very set up for traditional weddings, and they can't really see how their day fits into it. So either create a separate pricing guide or make your pricing guide just work for elopements and weddings, so that it's easier for them to see how their day would fit into your pricing structure, and it just makes it easier for them to book you. And really, the final step is just to be a cheerleader for elopements, and just to kind of throughout all of your platforms, your social media, just keep kind of as well talking about how you think elopements are a great alternative, especially with the current situation, you know, for couples to get married. Because, you know, even if you love, because, you know, some people do really love doing bigger weddings as well. Not everyone only wants to shoot elopements. And that's absolutely fine, you know, to do both. So just use your voice, use your audience, just to tell people they've got these options. Okay, right, I'm going to dig into the comments. I'm going to have another sip of my drink, and start reading through the questions. Okay, so I'll go back to Marco's one about working with a planner. Okay, so yeah, in terms of working with a planner versus helping a couple plan. So I do work quite a bit with a wedding planner, and in terms of the planning that I do, so I do often suggest with a lot of couples, or when they book, they get this guide from me, because most of the couples I work with are generally for Austrian Alps or the Dolomites. I'm just going to turn my video light down a bit because it's blinding me. So yeah, when couples book me straight away anyway, I send them a full kind of welcome guide, and that has already right at the top that I always recommend working with a planner, just because it can take so much of the stress away, and I have the name of the planner that I prefer to work with on there straight away anyway, and I'll list the benefits of working with a planner. In terms of the planning work that I do with clients, it is limited to, I will send them names and suggestions of other vendors, and I will do virtual location scouting for, if it's an elopement, if there are no guests, then locations for their photos, for ceremony and pictures. If they are bringing guests with them, then I will kind of send them a few kind of suggestions, but when they are bringing guests, I will very much say, I can give you some general areas to look at, but as soon as they have guests involved, then I already don't like to be involved in location suggestions, simply because I don't know the ability of the guests. I don't want to have any liability in where they choose for location, in case they pick somewhere where they're not allowed to have a location, have a ceremony, in case somebody struggles to get there because they've overestimated the fitness of somebody. So yeah, I will give suggestions, but I don't do any planning. When I am working with a planner, I work very much with the planner. Like generally, we are kind of communicating throughout the whole process. I will talk with them about the plans or the discussions that I've had with the couple. Yeah, it's very much just keeping communication open the whole time. If the couple sends me an email saying that they would really like to have photos in a certain location, or I've found a location that I've, that the couple really likes, then I'll chat with the planner and just make sure that it fits in with the plans. But usually when it's an elopement, the planner is also very happy for me to kind of guide the actual kind of timetable for the day, as long as it fits in with the other things. So yeah, it's a very much, I say I have a very good relationship with the two planners that I work with the most. Yeah, so it's, yeah, I guess it really depends. I haven't had any kind of experiences with other planners, and yeah, with bigger weddings it's kind of a different thing. Bigger weddings, I generally turn up when I'm told, but that doesn't happen. I don't really shoot too many of those these days. Just saying, how can you enhance her work and the value and the eyes of the couple? Yeah, I mean, enhancing the value of the planner. Generally, with the planner enhancing their value, I mean, the planner just takes care of a lot of the paperwork and stuff for the couple. The planner just does a lot of the stuff that causes the couple stress of doing all the paperwork, doing all the bookings. They do tend to not get a whole lot of the credit, but the couple is very thankful to them. I just make sure then that I try and credit the planner as much as possible whenever I post on Instagram, and say I keep referring couples to the planners even if they don't think they want them, as much as I can. So hopefully, yeah, Marco, that answers the question. If it doesn't, please comment and ask any other questions. Okay, Audrey, how do the majority of my clients find me? Facebook or Google ads, organically through Instagram posts, etc. I don't do Facebook or Google ads. I don't really do any paid advertising, actually, mainly because I never really worked out Facebook ads. Occasionally through Instagram. Most of mine is through SEO. And actually, I am going to do definitely a big blog post on SEO, maybe a mini training on SEO. I mean, I'm not an absolute expert on it. I've taken a great course, which is why I will do certainly a blog post on some of the best SEO resources for people. But SEO is the main driver of traffic to my website. So SEO is, yeah, search engine optimization. So organic Google search traffic. Instagram is good, and also Pinterest is quite a good one for me as well. Ollie, how do I feel about styled shoots? If you don't have content but you want to attract couples booked for elopements, particularly outdoor mountain elopements, is it okay to shoot a lot of styled shoots in the mountains to build a portfolio, or will clients see through this? I think there's a limit to the number of styled shoots that you can have, or that you should do. I think it's okay to have a few. I think the problem with too many styled shoots is it still doesn't really make up for actual real experience out in the field and doing it for real. Because a styled shoot, you have all the time in the world to style it and to shoot it, really. So, a little bit like, so Ollie, you were at the workshop, and okay, we had the couple and we were out in the mountain taking pictures, and we tried to keep it as realistic as it would be to a real elopement. but we still did kind of have a little bit of time, more with the couple and some kind of direction as to what we wanted them to do. So with styled shoots, it's great. Like you can, I mean, I would say with styled shoots, more treat it as if it was an elopement, but that you kind of are, as if it is an elopement that they booked you, it's just that you're not paying for it. So as if you were planning this for someone, so that you get the experience of, okay, what if this was their wedding day? So that you're planning it, you're finding the location, you're taking them out there, you're going through the whole motions of everything. And then you have the benefit of the portfolio, but you also then have the experience of the location scouting and again, try as well to find a real couple. So not someone who's used to being photographed. Because as well, it's great with styled shoots if you can get a really beautiful couple who's perfectly styled. It looks great for portfolio, but sometimes that can be intimidating for real couples. I always try to work with real couples if I am getting couples for a workshop, if I'm trying to do what I would call a styled shoot. For me is like a couple call where I'm like, I've got a location that I want to hike to. I want to see if it's feasible to hike there with a wedding couple. So I will just like put a message out. Does anyone want to come for a free photo shoot? Here's the deal. You have to hike with me to this location. And that's me get to test and see, if I'm hiking with a couple who gets a free photo shoot and they're kind of already uncomfortable, then I know, okay, I don't want to take a real couple who's paying me for the experience out here. So you can kind of do it that way. I think for me, I hate the term styled shoot, but yeah, again, it's up to you. It depends on what your brand is, on the type of couples you want to attract. But I would say, do what you can that gives you the experience that you need, so that you feel prepared when you're actually out there with real clients. Because for me, that is the problem with styled shoots, is that if you're doing everything always perfectly curated and then you have real clients who then book you for a service and you choke because you actually haven't had the experience of a real couple and having to plan the whole thing, from taking them, planning the location, actually getting them from their hotel, planning how they're going to get the hike, planning the timeline, realizing you didn't plan enough time in to get from A to B, or that it took them longer to hike than you thought it would. There's nothing that can make up for that kind of experience. So I would really recommend planning that kind of thing and doing that as a style shoot if you can. I hope that helps, and if that did, then let me know. Okay, Lenny, what sort of things are fun to do during elopements? Also, how do you know how often is good to give couples some space and stop shooting so they can have their own time? What sort of things are fun to do during elopements? So fun to do. I mean, the whole elopement is fun. I mean, so for me, or for my couples, their whole day is planned around what is fun for them. For some of them, they certainly, well, if you've been here for the whole thing, the 3-day elopements that I've done, I would definitely say those kinds of couples are the sort of couples that like type 2 fun. For their wedding day, they are those kind of couple. I'm going to take my jumper off because it's getting really warm in here. So for some of my couples, what is fun for them is doing a via ferrata, or hiking a summit, and just being in a beautiful place. Like for one couple, it was going snowshoeing, sometimes it's skiing. It really depends. Every couple is different, and this is all part of getting to know them throughout the booking and the planning process, and part of the kind of the location scouting. Part of the whole timeline planning is knowing kind of their whole story, why they want to elope, what they want to do, and planning that all into the day. So sometimes they might want to have a picnic, sometimes they might want to go somewhere, do something. So every couple's kind of story, I mean, it sounds very cliche, but every couple's story is unique. And so, like, it's very much based on what they want to do. So I'm never going to say, oh, like, this is fun, we should do this. If they want to hike, we hike. If they want to ski, we ski. If they want to have a picnic in a meadow, we have a picnic in a meadow, as long as it's somewhere where it's allowed to do that. It's very much, everything is crafted around them and what they want to do and how they see their day being the best day they could imagine it to be. So I have one couple from this summer who've postponed till next year who are both mountain bikers, and so their dream is to go mountain biking on their wedding day. So that's what we're gonna do. I'm not, because my mountain biking days are over after I went boom, right over the handlebars. But they will do that, and I will find a place to shoot it. You know, and so this isn't me going, oh, let's do this. This is fun. It's all about really getting to know your couples, and what is, you know, their thing. So, I mean, sometimes when I think about, you know, the urban, you know, if you're, you know, this is for me based in the Alps. If you are somebody who lives near a city, you know, if it's a couple who's really into history and culture, could it be going to an art gallery or a museum, going to a vintage vinyl shop and looking for something to, you know, something new, going to brunch together, or it could be, you know, whatever that couple loves to do. What is typically them? What is it, you know, almost you ask that question to the couple. If, you know, another couple had to describe you as what is just us, you know, what is it? Yeah. And so the other question, how often is it good to give couples some space and stop shooting so they can have their own time? So again, when you're with a couple, certainly for a whole day, on the elopement, you're not really shooting the whole time anyway. There's a lot of just walking and talking. You're not with the camera in their face the whole time. Certainly I'm not. And actually the way I shoot a lot now, since I started doing elopements, I shoot a lot more on zoom lenses than I ever used to. So I shoot a lot on a 70-200, and a 24-70. So I do sometimes shoot quite a lot, even when they think I'm not shooting, just from way, way, way back. And actually those are the nicest ones, when they think I'm not shooting anymore. But there are also quite a few occasions for elopements where we even have little breaks during the day where we'll just stop and go for lunch, or they'll just have like a little kind of downtime in the afternoon for a few hours before we go and do something else. Like, it really depends. So, you know, it's not like a full-on schedule sometimes for the whole day. Sometimes there will be kind of little breaks in the schedule. So it's not just constant shooting the whole time. Yeah. Any other questions from anyone? Whilst I have another drink. Oh, gone on for over an hour. That's very Suffolk there. Don't tend to have too much of a Suffolk anymore, but it was very Suffolk going on. I think that was all of the questions. Okay, well, it's gone Great. Awesome. And as well, if anyone comes up with any questions after this as well, if anyone's watching it on replay too, I feel like I'm always looking off to the side because I'm reading the comments. Then pop them in the comments under the group and I'll obviously reply to them later on. Oh, Gerhard, how do you deal with all the postponing with the elopements this year, not able to plan ahead? I would say lots of schnapps, Gerhard, but actually I can't drink anymore because of medication. Lots of stress, lots of crying, postponing. No, it has been really stressful. I mean, to be honest, it's been the same with everyone. Postponing elopements has been really hard. How I've dealt with it has been honestly just trying to be as understanding and flexible as possible with everybody. Knowing that it's also as heartbreaking for all my clients as it is for me, and that I would rather be flexible and let them postpone than lose them as clients altogether. Also because even though I can go on, booking fees are non-refundable and all of this, I still don't ever want to be in a position where a client is then asking for any deposits back. So I have, at the start of COVID, I was saying to people that they could postpone to a date within 12 months of their original wedding date. Some people were asking to postpone into 2022, and to be honest, I've just been letting them, if anyone wanted to move to 2022, I was letting them because 2021 was starting to get quite busy. So anyone who wanted to move into 2022 was fine with me. And to be honest, there are some 2021 postponements who went from 2020 to 2021 who I think may end up either postponing a second time to later in 2021 or into 2022, because I think it's cutting it close because they're in April, May time. So we'll just see. But yeah, it has been difficult because a lot of my clients come from the USA, so they have the problem that they can't travel at the moment and don't know when they will be able to. So yeah, postponements has been a big problem. But yeah, it's just, as you know, with elopements, as with any size wedding at the moment, for me the focus has always been just trying to be there for my clients and to make sure that they feel like through the whole process that they're completely taken care of, and that I am checking in with them as much as possible just to see how they're doing, sending them regular updates, sending them little planning posts, tips and tricks and guides on how to plan their ceremonies and things, so that they don't feel forgotten as well. Because it feels weird having them book like almost a year ago to then have no communication for a year as well. Yeah, that's hard, but I think, yeah, we've all had a challenging year, let's put it that way. Yeah, I hope you're doing well as well. Anyone else got any questions? Man, my light is blinding me. I don't know how anyone shoots with video lights on their faces. Like, I can't see. Anyone else? Otherwise, I am going to log off and we'll answer any other questions that come up in the comments at a later date. All right. Okay, well then, yeah, I'm going to wrap this one up here, and I haven't decided what the next thing is going to be about, but next time I will do it via Zoom so that I can actually use the slides that I prepared, so that you don't just have to watch my face, which is kind of weird for all of us, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, and If you've got any particular topics, questions that you would like me to cover in a future chat with Kat, or whatever it's going to be. No, in a future one of these talks, I think I'll do maybe alternate between Facebook Live and I might try doing some on Instagram Live as well. Then let me know. Yeah, I'm always open to know what everyone would like to have trainings on. I'm looking at getting someone to come in and talk about copywriting as well at some point soon. So if you've got any questions about copywriting, also please, I'll put a post in a group and people can leave their questions under on that one. But any other topics that you'd like me to cover, let me know. All right, everyone, have an amazing evening. Oh, it's weekend for me now because I don't work Fridays. So have an amazing weekend and speak to you all soon. Bye.